Okay, we're going to pick it up from where we left off yesterday. This is one point of the sugya which could be potential game changing in terms of from a tipping point and a drastic shift, something that we didn't learn up until now. And that is what the Taz over here discussed in Oz Bays, talking about what we purchased first on Chanukah. If we only have limited money, do we purchase a nair for Chanukah, a nair for Shabbos? What's the story over here? It begins by quoting the Beis Yosef, which we already saw, that Kiddush is an obligation from the Torah, Chanukah is rabbinic. Nevertheless, since it's possible to perform Kiddush on Chalah, so therefore the Chanukah would be better because of the reason of publicizing the miracle, Pursume Nisa, which we already learned in the past. So comes along the Taz, and he says in the highlighted section, and we already saw the Bach had difficulty with this Beis Yosef. Lafiza, Imein Lo Pas, same story as what the Bach said. If a person doesn't have any Chalah, Az Pas Adif, the bread, the challah would come first. In that case, the person doesn't have any challah. Challah is priority one. Shesarich lekadesh alav midaraisa, because the person needs to make kiddush on it midaraisa, right? From a Torah level, person would then need to make kiddush. Now we already saw the Bach didn't like that because you could do kiddush even without challah midaraisa. But anyways, but the Rambam writes that both Ner Chanukah and kiddush would both be midrabanan. He says that they would both be rabbinic. Ner Chanukah adif, and in fact, Ner Chanukah would be better mikiddush hayom mishum persiminisa because of publicizing the miracle. Vimkein afilu ein lo pas Ner Chanukah adif, and therefore, if so, even if a person doesn't have challah, Ner Chanukah would be better. So this is similar to the right what we saw in the Bach, that there would be no difference. The kiddush would only be derabanan. Okay. This is where the Taz then shifts into an interesting gear and twists things around a little bit. We're going to have to see if everyone agrees to this. Aval Nira. However, it appears everyone agrees that Challah would come first. If a person can't afford Challah, Kiddush, Ner Chanukah, Ner Shabbos, Challah would for sure come first. Havdalah, it comes all the way up. The Masha Kos B'Simin Reish Ayin Al Siv Gimel, because we learned Hilchos Kiddush. The Kiddush koydem l'sarchi suda. We said that Kiddush comes before the actual food that would be used for Suda on Shabbos. If a person can't afford yayin and food for the Suda, so then the halacha would be that the challah would come first, before the actual food for the Suda. Also keep in mind, the challah itself is nourishing. Okay. Near the Hainu Shar Sarchi Suda Tashum is talking about other items that are going to be used for the Suda, other dishes, cooked items. The Karu Bigamar Parakar Vipsachim, the Gemara says Kavarayom, calls the honor of the day. Aval Pas, the Lecha Mishnah, who Koidim Liyayin Kiddush. But the Chala, the Lecha Mishnah, they'll all come before the Yayin for the Kiddush. The Halacha Mishnah, Lakuli Alma Daraisa, because everyone agrees that the Chala is Daraisa. So this is where the Taz gets interesting. The Chal is daraisa. What's the pasuk? It's the Gemara in Shabbos Kuf. Yudayim Abeis Kedama Rabbi Abba Perikol Kisvei Dechsiv. The pasuk in Shmo says Tezvav Chav Beis Lechem Mishnah. So the Taz, interestingly enough, learns that having Lechem Mishnah on Shabbos or Chala is an obligation from the Torah. We're going to see momentarily if others hold like this as well.
Now, is he saying this is one of the 613?
Yeah.
It falls under its own mitzvah of Lechem Mishnah.
Yeah, that's right. Perhaps. Yeah, perhaps. V'shalosh sudos gam kin daraisa. The Taz holds additionally all three sudos on Shabbos are an obligation midaraisa. Upas b'inun and yini challah. K'deitz b'simin reisha in dalad. Siv dalad. Im kein kolosh kein shu koidim l'ner Chanukah. So then, if this is so, this certainly comes before ner Chanukah. She'ina ela midrabanan, because ner Chanukah is only midrabanan. Kain nirali. This is what it appears to me. So what do we see from over here? That this would come before Ner Chanukah, according to the Taz. According to the Taz, the Challah would come before because it's definitely Daraisa. You got Daraisa all over the place. You got a Daraisa on the Challah, on the Lechem Mishnah, and on the three Sudas.
And he doesn't mention anything about being Makadesh Shabbos Peh.
Nope. But he definitely knows what his Shver said about that, the Bach. The Pri Megadim over here says, goes into this a little bit more. If you're in tefillah or not, doesn't really go. He says over here. Pri Megadim comments on this Taz on a few of the side points that he made. He says over here, that which the Taz said, the Chal on Shabbos is Da'araisa. Some say that it's not Da'araisa. Lechem Mishnah, it's Asmachta. That when it says Lechem Mishnah in the Pasuk, it's just the obligation of the bread is based on that Pasuk, but not that the mitzvah itself would be Mid'araisa. That is the Shitas HaTaz.
Yeah, he's pretty strong about it.
The Taz, yeah? Let's take a look at, see what the Mishnah Berurah says about this, as this sugya evolves in a very interesting way. Because this is a monkey wrench thrown in over here. Chalah comes first. The Gemara didn't even say that. Chalah comes first.
The Gemara introduced.
Gemara didn't mention Chalah. Didn't even mention Chalah. Umayri, Diishlo Paz, Zok the Mishnah Berurah. Like the Taz is talking about you have bread. The whole sugi in the Gemara, the whole case in the Torah Shulchan Aruch is talking about you have bread. The Ein Lo Pas, Kniyas HaPas, Doicha Fiulin Shabbos. If you don't have bread, purchasing the bread overrides even Ner Shabbos. Certainly it would override Ner Chanukah and Kiddush Ayom and Kiddush. And he said, look in some in Reish Samagim, all the halachas of halakas Ner Shabbos, Sifkat and Tes, Mishnah Berurah and the Be'er Halach over there. Sharetzion Zion. Taz, other Achronim, look in Simin Reish Samagim on the Be'er Halacha, that which you wrote regarding the Taz and Derech Chaim. So we see now that bread would actually come first, before everything. Bread is number one, it comes first. What is the reasoning that the Mishnah Berurah says? He doesn't say. He just says it as a halacha. No reasoning over here. No logic behind it, why bread will come first, according to the Mishnah Berurah.
Pasha, you saying?
He doesn't say Davar Basha, he just says this is what the case is referring to. He doesn't explain why. Yeah?
Well, what's the Zion going on again?
Zion is the Sheretz Zion. If you don't have bread,
you
buy the challah first. Sheretz Zion. He said, look at the Be'er Halacha. Look what he's quoting the Taz that we just saw. Other Achronim, he says, look at the Be'er Halacha and the halachas of halakas near Shabbos. He doesn't explain why. As long as those will have the Mishnah Berurah, they certainly explain why. Just called the Otzar Chachma yesterday because the Lavush wasn't opening. So I said, why not? They said it's part of a Zichron Aaron package, which now we charge for. I said, yeah, but I've had it for the last 8 years. I'm grandfathered in. He didn't know what grandfathered in meant, that terminology, more Heimish, Chassidish, whatever it is. So he said, yeah, for sure. So he manually then gave me the Svarim. He remotely went in the computer and everything. Anyways, I said, what's going on with the Oz V'Hadar and the Mesifta Svarim? Because you don't have them now. You don't have any of the new ones that came out. They said they did. I couldn't find it. He helped me find it. So they have the Oz V'Hadar on the actual Shulchan Aruch, the Magen from the Taz.
No, there was something.
But they're on Simonim after Siman Shin and Hilchos Shabbos. They have the whole Hilchos Pesach, which is good when we get the Pesach. We'll for sure utilize that.
Mm-hmm.
They have the whole Hilchos Pesach, but they don't have on the Shulchan Aruch yet before Siman Shin and Hilchos Shabbos. They gave what we're doing. So, anyways, okay. So he says like this: the Chiyuv L'Vsoa Lechem Mishnah Hu Min HaTorah. They add in that the Chiyuv to do Lechem Mishnah is Min HaTorah. Yeah. Vote and furthermore, the Chayiv Adam Le'echol Shalosh Sudas B'Shabbos V'Pas Dafka. A person is obligated to eat 3 Sudas on Shabbos with Chalah specifically. Therefore, purchasing Chalah, which is an obligation from the Torah, would come before an Ner Chanukah. So they're going with the Daraisa route. But again, this is all within the Taz. This is all within the Taz that the Mishnah Berurah quotes.
Right.
For sure, Ner Chanukah and Kiddush Yom, that you need to do Kiddush before Ner Chanukah. Footnote Yud Aleph, Yud Beis. This is what the Taz writes based on the Gemara. We already saw that. Like a Mishnah, but Onam Yesh Cholkin, quoted by the Magen Avram in Siman Kuf Pei Ches, Sifkat and Tes. The Magen Avram in a different place. V'soivrim, and they hold she'ein achiyuv ela midrabanan. The obligation is only dirabanan. V'apasaku asmacht ba'alma v'vachin yiradas be'alacha. That's what it seems like the be'alacha holds. That's what we just saw in the Pri Megadim. So I think the general consensus is that lechem mission is a chiyuv dirabanan nowadays. Taz holds is daraisa.
The Bialach is arguing, I mean, I'm sure he's a self-serving himself.
No, over here he's quoting what the Taz says.
Just quoting.
The Mishnah Berurah over here didn't specify that it's a chiyuv daraisa. He just said that bread would come first.
He's not saying all.
Yeah. Let's see what he says, what they say he says in Siman Reish Samach Gimel over there. Let's see what he says. Shamavor. Over there it's explained. Fella's got money. Mitzum Samim. It's limited money. He's got $20. Mitzvahs Lechem Mishnah L'Suda Shabbos Kodim L'Chol. The first thing that the money goes towards is Chalah for the Suda. Lechem Mishnah. V'ner l'Shabbos koidim elikach mishar me'achalam. Afterwards, if he's got extra monies that's left over, so he should use that to purchase a ner for Shabbos. Dav shar ma'achalam abasar him gam kein oneg Shabbos. Even though that other food is part of oneg Shabbos. Mikol makom ner adif yoser mishum shalom bayis. Nevertheless, a ner is better. Why? Because of shalom bayis. Okay, we already know that order. That's not new news. That's old news. Just your dalit over here. Okay. Be'er Halacha says, B'shem the Pri Megadim, bread comes first. That's talking about Keshir Sevilla. However much it takes for you to become satisfied and satiated from the bread. But loy dai b'kazai. It's not just to have a small piece of challah and then you're good. You may know savim mishir if you're not going to be satiated with that amount. But dafka b'beis su'udois, we're talking about 2 meals. Rishonos, the first 2 meals, hapas kodemis, bread comes first. Bala inyan suda shlishis ina davar mavura, aima pas kodemis afba. So we're talking about the first 2 sudas, challah comes first. But third suda, it's not so simple that the challah comes first. Even though avsha Pri Megadim hechriya, shapa suda zo hapas kodemis laner, and even though the Pri Megadim says that in this suda the bread will come before the ner. So the Pri Megadim says that even for Shalosh Shudas, the Challah comes first, but the Be'er Halacha over there says that no, Yeshalim Mershaner Shabbos Chanukah Kodim L'Sushis. No, it would be like this: bread for Challah for the first 2 Sudas, then we go back to Ner Shabbos for the Shalom Bayis, then Ner Chanukah, and then only afterwards would the Challah come in for Shalosh Shudas. Ma'achar sheyish behem. Yishum shalom bayis b'minitz, like we just said. But kol shekein shebesuda shlisha sein sarach bayis kadei svia. Dak yosh shalom yoytz mikabetz v'imkein ashar yoytz l'ner. Certainly, you wouldn't need on Shalosh Shudas challah the amount that now you'll be satiated and satisfied from that. It's enough even if you just have a small amount. The rest you could use for ner. So, yeah. So the question really becomes, if the challah is not daraisa, why would it come first? That's really the question that's begging to be asked. If you're going to hold like the Magen Avram and others that say that the pasuk is an asmachta, and it wouldn't be daraisa, then why would it come first? Anyways, yeah. Well, the peh, that's more kiddush.
Right. So I'm saying between what and what? Between
why would challah come first? Here's a revised list. By the way, I started typing all this up. It's already 3 pages on this little short simon over here. But here's the list, revised. Challah, Ner Shabbos, Shalom Bayis, Ner Chanukah, Persuminisa, Derabanan, Kiddush. It's going to be Tadir, more common. Havdalah Daraisa, but you can fulfill your obligation. Shemona Esrei verbally mid Daraisa. Wine is mid Derabanan. So I wanna
The challah would only be according to the Taz? That's to
no,
everybody.
the challah is according to everyone. There's a small machlokes within the challah is the obligation of having challah on Shabbos midaraisa midarabanan.
But still challah wins out.
Challah always wins out. It seems like no one said otherwise. And not only that, by the way, and this is what I wanted to do over here. If we return to what we learned in Hilchos Kiddush, wonder if we get a detailed view. Detailed. See, we learned this around 2-3 years ago. You got all the dates over here of when we learned this. Siv Gimel, date modified, 2021. So we learned this 3 years ago. Wait, but that was right
Yeah.
before 22. So it's 2 years ago, right?
No, it's 3.
No, 10/5/21.
21, we're now in,
So that's right before 22. So 22, 23,
we're going.
23, 24, 24, all 3 years. Yeah. Yeah, a little over 3 years ago. Good job.
Mhm.
So Siv Gimel is what talks about all of those halachas, but it's more than that, those halachas. We just go to the notes that we wrote, then when we learned this, and we go to Siv Gimel. What Siv is this? Siv base. Siv Gimel. So if we go to Siv Gimel, intro and order. These are the notes that we took. Torah and Shulchan Aruch rule that someone who can only afford, again, look it up yourself. Reish Ayin Aleph Sif Gimel. These are notes summarizing what we learned over there, similar to the
Yeah,
notes that we
says-
take now. Torah and Shulchan Aruch rule that someone who can only afford wine for one of the Shabbos meals or food for one of the meals should purchase wine for the meal on Shabbos night. Mara says that kavod of the day is better than kavod of the night. This refers to the meal, meaning if one only has enough food for the meal, the food should be used for the meal during the day. Furthermore, the day meal should be more lavish than the night meal. That was a beautiful discussion that we learned also, and
Huge
why.
discussion.
Yeah, that was very applicable. A lot of people don't realize that. Magen Avraham explains that this only applies if he has challah. Oh, see, so it's not just a Magen Avraham and Kufbei. Well, that was a little bit different. This is a Magen Avraham, Reish Ayin Aleph Katan Gimel. This only applies if he has challah. However, if he doesn't have challah, then I think then it is preferable for him to buy challah and recite kiddush on the challah. So the challah, remember, using for kiddush also. His reasoning is ein kiddush al makam suda, meaning the challah is needed in order for the kiddush to be activated and work. Furthermore, there's an obligation to eat bread on Shabbos. So we get a little bit more of a time. We see, and we should now paste that over to Kiddush over here. What we're doing. The challah. I'm just gonna put it in. I'm just gonna put this in the footnote and then fix this later. Insert footnote. Get this thing out of here. How do you get that thing out of here? All right. No references. Insert footnote. So I'm gonna put that Magen Avraham in later. Fix that. Put that in the right spot. But this is a beautiful reason which we didn't see in our Simon. Reish Ayin Aleph Simon, Reish Ayin Aleph, and then Gimel. I'm just gonna write this. So this is a beautiful idea to keep in mind. You have 2 reasons. You need the challah for the suda because you can only make kiddush in the place where you're gonna have suda. If you're not gonna have challah, you ain't gonna have a suda, and there's an obligation to eat bread on Shabbos, and your challah could be counting for kiddush. So even if you hold it's not daraisa, you got a lot of factors flying at you, and therefore which would now make challah number 1 no matter what, even before Ner Shabbos. This is an unbelievable thing. I just want to sit on this, for a minute. This point, a lot of people, it's a great thing. They do the daf yomi, they get a bikia, so to say, but people have to realize you can't learn the halacha from the Gemara. The only way to learn the halacha properly is the way that we're doing it. Because you see from over here, a guy could easily conclude, oh, I'm holding in Shas. I chazed the Bavli 101 times, whatever. Very good. But you're going to think that now, if a person has limited money, Ner Shabbos is going to come first, which is totally not factual. Challah comes first. That's the halacha. Finished. The Gemara didn't mention Challah, though, so you'd never know that. Elamai, you have to learn the halacha properly, and then you'll know that. Furthermore, you wouldn't even know that there's going to be a machlokes, which we didn't get to yet. It's not going to be so pashut that nowadays the challah would come first. Excuse me, not the challah would come first. That Ner Shabbos would come before Ner Chanukah because of the whole electricity shiloh.
Right.
So we're going to get to that more. So those, just on this one little teeny sugya, those are two major confusions that a person can have. An amazing example of a case point to prove that it's not enough just to learn Gemara. Anyways, so here's the list that we made over here. Challah, Kiddush can be made on Challah at night meal. Challah at day meal. Chutshani in a chelik dalit on Shabbos. Perik pei hey os yud zayin. So we see that even there's a hierarchy of Challah. The night Suda will come first. That's what we see in detail over here. Then Ner Shabbos, Kiddush at night, Kiddush during the day, morning Suda, Magen Avraham is unsure. It could be that morning meal precedes Kiddush during day. That's the Magen Avraham, and then night meal. So we see more of a detailed list of if a person has limited limited money, what he would purchase. So the question is, where would Ner Chanukah come into play over here? The answer is it would probably come right over here in between 3.5 and 4. Be like a 3.5. Because Ner Chanukah comes before Kiddush, right?
We said Challah comes before Kiddush, right? Or Challah peas.
Yeah, Challah's first. What do you mean Challah's first? So I guess Ner Chanukah would be after Ner Shabbos. Right? Then Chanukah candle. Chanukah candle. See notes to Simon 6, 7, 8. I like writing that 6, 7, 8. Right next to each other all the
I wonder
time.
what you,
I did it already a lot
I
of
wonder
times.
what you,
Added to the
I just added
Shabbos
to
one.
I just added to the Shabbos ones. Because you're adding Chanukah. See notes there. What'd you say, David?
I wonder how much, it's interesting that this is it's a simon or it's a sif, but no, I'm thinking like in the external part of the mitzvah, external part of what we're talking about, like I'm talking about how poor people, the poverty that people must have had, like this is, aren't we talking about like penny? We're talking about like pennies, right?
Well, really, we're talking about dollars. I mean, if a person would get
For one candle, oil to last 30 minutes. How
right,
much does that cost?
keep in mind, they don't really sell anything individually nowadays, so you'd have to get the whole pack, and then you also need something to put it
No,
in.
I'm talking about when this was
Okay,
written.
so let's say you could buy one candle at a time. There are probably places nowadays that you could buy one at a time. Probably not so likely, but let's say back then, a couple thousand years ago, right? So you used to sell. Now everything is mass produced and it's sold more in bulk, even if it's a small quantity. You can't just get one as a bare minimum. But back then, let's say, right? So you would buy one candle. Keep in mind, candles were probably more expensive back then for two
Yeah,
reasons.
for sure.
Number one is that they didn't have electricity back then, so that was their primary light, and therefore supply and demand. There was probably more of a demand for it. If there's more of a demand, there's probably less of a supply. That means that the price was more. So there's a certain price, it was a little bit higher. And then there's a price always for yayin, especially back then that it wasn't mass produced. Could have been more expensive, who knows? And then the bread also. So we're talking about nowadays, let's say will cost around around, I don't know, $5, $10, let's say. Right? So if a person didn't have any money, so then they had to make a decision which one came first. And historically, throughout the Jewish history, from what I'm aware of, and I'm certainly not an expert in history, I think this is one of the wealthiest times we've ever been in. So
For sure, yeah.
right, so it's hard for us to apply to this. So a certain Rav told me, he said they were doing the probas, they were testing, they were trialing multiple people to become the potential Rav, and they said this was the sugya that was prepared. It was around Chanukah time. This sugya that we're doing now, I actually want to email him all these notes when we're done, maybe. And this was the sugya that everyone gave a shir on and gave it their best. This little sugya, but you see it does get complicated. There's a lot of lamdas, there's a lot of halachas, there's a lot of svaras involved. And I said on the spot, it's so funny that was a sugya, it's the least applicable simon in all of Hilchos Chanukah, probably. Arguably, I would argue at least. So it's interesting. But anyways, so this is basically Siman Reish Ayin Aleph. This is the hierarchy. Then that's already going to someone else. The rest of this is going to something else, miscellaneous stuff. Yeah. Okay. So that's that. And that I just wanted to just cross-reference that. And now we understand that Magen Avraham of why Chalah would actually come first, would actually proceed. All right. Now
Kiddush Makom Suda, you said, right?
what?
They need it for Kiddush Makom Suda.
Kiddush Makom Suda, and it could be used for Kiddush, and there's an obligation to have the Chalah. Right. Okay. What would you say?
What was the Magen Avraham we have to do? There was a one Magen
We saw the
Avraham.
Magen Avraham. We
did?
saw that.
Okay,
Yeah, we
okay,
saw
okay,
that.
okay, it was 2 days.
Yeah, that was we saved it. Yeah, that was Magen Avraham and Beis.
Okay.
It's possible that nowadays that we light inside near Chanukah will come first because
Okay.
you won't sit in the dark, and that's where we went into electricity, and we're going to go into that more. Let's just end with the question which we might have ended with yesterday. We have a reason of ein ma'avirin ala mitzvahs. All right, so that means that you don't pass over a mitzvah. So doesn't the mitzvah of both Ner Shabbos and Ner Chanukah, doesn't the obligations hit us before the obligation of Chalah, before the obligation of Kiddush? Why then does the Gemara even have a Shaila? Why didn't even the Gemara say Ein Ma'avirin ala mitzvahs gets applied over here? That's the question to end with of the Ein Ma'avirin ala mitzvahs. So Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we're going to pick it up with that answer, and we're going to get closer to wrapping up this sugya. We have to answer other questions as well, and so and we have to discuss electricity if nowadays this order changed in terms of this hierarchy. So Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we'll continue. Everyone should have a wonderful day.
Sure. Have a good day.